Hey, what's going on? Chris Orzechowski here from the emailcopywriter.com. Today I want to share with you my 8 favorite copywriting books that are going to help you become a better copywriter. First thing I want to let you know about this list of copywriting books is I'm going to include a lot of books that you probably might not have heard of. You know, everyone knows about the John Caples book, or the Robert Collier letter book, the Gary Halbert boron letters. Like, you know, I call that like the copywriter canon. If you've been around for long enough, someone has probably mentioned these books to you. Those are all good books to read. How to Write a Good Advertisement by Victor Schwab. Great books, right? But that's kind of like the intro level. And like, how do you, once you've read all those books and you kind of got those basic skills, how do you get to that next level in your copy and really write persuasive copy that makes people buy? All right, let's get into it. First book is Confessions of an Advertising Man by David Ogilvy. I absolutely love this book. I love David Ogilvy, super smart guy. Obviously one of the most successful, he built one of the most successful ad agencies in the world. It's still around today, even long after he has passed on. And a big part of what made him a success was writing this book, because back then there weren't as many books on the topic of advertising. It was something that people didn't really understand. But the cool thing about this book is this actually helped him drum up business. And the reason why is because when you go through the pages of it, you'll see he not just tells, he tells stories and talks about his career and things like that, but he also talks about his process, right? He talks about how they were able to create some of the most, him and his team were able to create some of the most iconic advertising campaigns for some of the biggest companies in the world. And it's cool because obviously if you're a copywriter and you're trying to get more clients, showing your work is always something super important, and Ogilvy was one of the people who really understood this at the highest levels. I love this book because he really breaks down a lot of his copywriting techniques, and I think it's super solid. So this is definitely one that if you don't have it, if you haven't read it yet, definitely check it out. Next book on the list, Breakthrough Advertising by Gene Schwartz. This book is dense. It is dumb thick. It is like a textbook. This one is actually a little bit tough to get through, at least on the first time that you go through it, or if you're a newer copywriter and you haven't been around as long, it's definitely gonna be a little bit harder. But man, when you understand the concepts in this book, you are going to be an absolute killer when it comes to writing copy. Some of the concepts in this book that are super important and really had a big impact on me are things like understanding market sophistication levels, understanding market awareness levels. I mean, if all you did was take away the piece about market awareness and understand how people, their awareness levels change as they move through an advertising funnel. If that's all you took from this book, you'd be in a much better position. You'd understand how to write copy better. Your writing would hit harder. It would hit people at the right level of their customer journey. It's super important. There's people who say read the first 3 or 4 chapters and that's all you need, but there's a lot of good stuff throughout this book. There's tons of examples. There's tons of amazing concepts from this book. One of them being that, Gene said that you can't create desire, you can only channel it. And little things that a lot of newer copywriters might not understand, but when you understand this book, you are going to be lights out. Next book on the list is Convert by Frank Kern. Now, I absolutely love Frank Kern. I'm a huge fan. I have almost all of his stuff, and I've been studying his stuff for years. And this book, it says Convert 2.0, simple little formula that sold $50 million worth of products and services online. And this is Frank's one of his books. He has a few of them, but he breaks down how he sells products on the internet. And it's really cool because what's really awesome about Frank's stuff is he knows how to break it down into a very simple level that anyone can understand, right? Whereas the last book was Breakthrough Advertising, and that was very almost like esoteric. This is very down to earth. And this is, you could read this in one sitting and have a very clear picture of how to create a marketing campaign, an advertising campaign for yourself that's going to do reasonably well. And what I love about this book specifically is where some of these other books on the list were written, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years ago when we had different advertising mediums. This one is written for the internet, which is really, really cool. So I don't know if you can get this book on Amazon, but if you go to, search Convert 2.0 Frank Kern, I think it's probably $5, probably less than $10 to buy a digital copy of the book, but really recommend this book. This one has been pivotal for me. And Frank he doesn't just talk about how to write copy, but he talks about kind of the psychology behind why his campaigns tend to work so well. So highly recommend this book as well. Next book on the list, The Book of Gossage. Now this book is, you probably never heard of this one. You probably never heard of Howard Gossage, but this guy is my spirit animal. He's my absolute favorite Mad Men era advertising mentor to learn from, right? So this guy, Howard Gossage, he pioneered a ton of techniques. I mean, he would do crazy stuff. Like, one of the things he did was he was writing an ad. This was in a publication, in a magazine, and he was writing an ad and literally stopped the ad mid-sentence, and people back then, they were reading this and they're like, whoa, where's the rest of the ad? And what he did was he continued the ad over the series in the next 4 weeks, and he just picked up where he left off the following week in the next week's publication. He would do crazy stuff like that. He had an idea for Finna gas where he would basically, he's like, how do you sell gasoline, right? He said, well, we're just going to give people balloons that are filled with pink air. And I mean, the whole thing behind it was like, there was, I guess, a pink balloon inside the regular balloon, but it was this kind of like gimmicky thing that generated a huge amount of publicity and PR and interest and media coverage, picked it up. He was the master of running an ad in one tiny small little placement and running it one time and generating so much buzz and PR that everyone would be talking about it, right? Whereas some people, they were trying to carpet bomb the landscape with as many ads on as many platforms, as many mediums, run it as many times as you can so you really get the message everywhere. He would do the opposite approach. He would say, what's the least amount of work that I can do to get the most exposure and really make this product blow up? And that's why I love Gossage's stuff. He was a bit of a troll, so I love it. I love the energy that he brought to the game. And this is a book where it's probably hard to find. It's probably pretty expensive, but if you can get your hands on the book of Gossage, this dude has been a huge influence on me. I love this book and I go back to it all the time. So this is definitely one to check out as well. Next book on the list, it's actually 2 books in one. So this one's by Claude Hopkins, My Life in Advertising and Scientific Advertising. They're both kind of shorter books, so I guess the publisher combined them into 2. But everyone talks about scientific advertising, and it's a great book, right? It's one of the foundational texts that you read as a copywriter. It's good, it's solid, teach you a lot of core principles and things, but people really love that book a little bit too much. I mean, it's good and everything, but after you read it 2 or 3 times, okay, you kind of got all the lessons in there. But My Life in Advertising, that book, so it's the first half of this essentially. Claude talks about kind of his career and how he rose from an unknown dude to literally the most famous and richest, ad man in the world at the time, which was back in, when was this book published? 1923, right? So it was about 100 years ago. And that was the part for me, the lessons in scientific advertising were good because of the form and the structure and the principles behind writing copy. That stuff's all important. But it was really cool for me to see the journey that Claude went on and how he went from client to client and how he kind of built his career campaign by campaign and built a name for himself and became a somebody in an industry where before he was a nobody. And he did it without the internet, which is, I think a lot harder. So it was a very inspiring book for me just to see his journey and see how he went through and went about his career and made that climb, right? How he climbed up the mountain. And, if you're into that kind of thing, you would definitely like My Life in Advertising. He also talks about some of his ideas behind the campaigns that he created, even more so than he did within scientific advertising. So I think it's super important. And if nothing else, it'll teach you to kind of dream big and think big with the type of campaigns that you're doing for your clients or for yourself. Next book on the list is Win Bigly by Scott Adams. Now, this one might get me into some trouble. So this book is actually, it's called Win Bigly, Persuasion in a World Where Facts Don't Matter. And this is a book that is about the foundational principles of persuasion, but it's told mostly within the arena of politics. And why did Scott Adams do that? Well, obviously he's, he makes a study out of this stuff. He's a smart dude. You might like him, you might hate him, whatever, you can still learn from him, regardless of what your opinion is of the guy. He talks about the 2016 election, and he really dives deep into all the persuasion lessons between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, what each of them did good, what each of them, the things that they did well, the things that they didn't do so well, and, how those lessons of persuasion at a large, national political election level, how you can break down the frameworks that go on behind the good things that each candidate did, essentially. Hopefully that makes sense. And this one was a big, important book for me because it really, the whole subhead, Persuasion in a World Where Facts Don't Matter, people think that they're logical, or people think that other people are logical. But once you read this book, you really start to understand that people are not logical at all. He talks about things like confirmation bias, which was huge. And once you learn about confirmation bias, you'll see it everywhere. He talks about cognitive dissonance. He talks about, pacing and leading. There's tons of good concepts that I took from this book that I still use in my copy today. He talks about the levels of persuasion with, fear, a big fear being at the top, identity is at the top, and then big fear, and there's a whole list of things, and he goes down what is the strongest, what is your argument that you're making in your copy, like how to make it one level stronger, right? So it's a bit esoteric in terms of it. He really dives into kind of like the psyche of people and how they think. But I think that if you're a copy nerd, you're absolutely gonna love this book. Like I said, Scott, he's, you might love him, you might hate him, whatever. Doesn't really matter. There's still good stuff that you can learn in this book, and I think Win Bigly is definitely should be on your list if you're a copywriter. All right, the next book on this list, this one is like the crown jewel. This is a $5,000 book. This is Gary Bencivenga's 100 Seminar. I don't even know if you could actually buy this anymore, because I know that Gary only produced this was basically Gary Bencivenga. If you're not familiar with him, he was, or actually is, probably one of, if not the best copywriters to ever live. He was a guy who, the only person who could really beat his controls was himself, right? Nobody wanted to go up against the guy in a head-to-head split test because he was that good. And he sold, billions of dollars worth of products in all different kinds of industries. And he's actually an amazing person. I met him years ago at the Affiliate Summit, and he sent me this book. And I will forever be grateful, because I studied this book and I still go back to this book all the time years later. And there's just so many foundational principles. I can't really get too much into what's covered in the book, because that's part of the whole secret sauce behind it. So if you have the money, it's a huge investment, but it'll definitely give you an insane ROI, in my opinion. That's what I think. At least it did for me. The lessons I learned are just absolutely classic. He talks about the Bencivenga persuasion equation. He talks about how to create blockbuster products. He goes all into, split test breakdowns of what he's done. And he just has these amazing, philosophical principles that when you adapt them into your own writing style, your writing just can't help but get better. This book it's thick. We want to talk about dense. This is over 500 pages long, and each page is one of those pages where you don't speed read through this book. This is a book where you kind of go through it very slowly, very methodically. You're going to take notes. You're going to reread things. You're going to make post-its. You're going to jot stuff down. Like, this book is an absolute tank, but this will transform your copywriting very fast and leave a lasting impression on you. So, Gary's a great dude, great person, amazing book. I'd definitely check this one out if you can. All right, number 8, we have Flip the Script by Oren Klaff. Now, this is one where I don't know if people would technically label this as a copywriting book, but Copywriting is Salesmanship in Print. This is a book about sales. As far as I'm concerned, it's essentially the same thing. Oren has another really good book called Pitch Anything, and that's his first book. You'd probably want to start there, but this book, I love this book because it's just a series of stories, and that's how he teaches the concept. So anytime you find a book like that, I'm always a huge fan. But Flip the Script is this formula for how this guy, Oren, he does these huge deals for some of the biggest companies in the world, multi-billion dollar deals. He's the guy you call when you have to get the pitch just right. So when you want to talk about levels to this game, and you want to talk about who's at the highest level and can really help you actually sell when your neck is on the line, this is the guy you want to learn from. So if you haven't read this book, man, you are in for it. It is just phenomenal. There's different parts of his equation, his Flip the Script equation. But for instance, one of the things I learned in this book is called the flash roll. And this has made me so much money, this one technique. Because what the flash roll is it's just this concept where you demonstrate your expertise in a subject. You show the person, hey, you know what, you're up here, I'm at the same level as you, right? So it's kind of like a status thing a little bit, but it gets you on their level very fast and establishes a rapport in 30 seconds. And it's amazing. I've tried it. It absolutely works. And that's basically, I'm not going to really dive into it. I want you to get the book and actually read it, because Oren's going to do a much better job of explaining it. But this is an amazing, amazing book. I've probably read this about 3 or 4 times. All these books I've read multiple times. Every single book on this list I've read multiple times, because they're just so powerful. And every time you read it, your copy gets a little bit better. So I would definitely recommend checking out Flip the Script. It's a phenomenal book. Flip the Script, getting people to think your idea is their idea. Anytime you can do that, you can flip the script like that, it's going to make your copy way better. So definitely check this one out too. All right, I got to have a couple bonus books as well. So that was the 8, but I got 2 more for you real quick, and I think you're going to like both of these. So I had to selfishly include one of my books, Scale While You Sleep. So this one, if you are in e-commerce, if you're an e-commerce writer, if you've ever written for a company that sells physical products, if you're into email marketing automation, I would definitely check this book out. This is a shorter book. You could read this in one sitting, but you can get it on Amazon. There's also a link below the video where you can grab it. If it's $5, and you can get a whole bunch of bonuses. I throw in a whole bunch of trainings, a copy of my print newsletter, or what's a digital copy of my print newsletter. So it's a great value for $5. I mean, you can't beat it. But I wrote this book to help you with email marketing automation, and it's going to show you 9 automated email sequences that can grow any e-commerce business by 30% within 30 days. And people say, wow, that's a pretty big claim. And we've grown businesses like 300% in 30 days, or their email revenue at least, with some of these, sometimes even more. We've made companies tens of thousands of dollars a month, in addition that they were leaving on the table every single month with the stuff that we cover in this book. So definitely a great book. Obviously, I'm tooting my own horn. I wrote it, but I think you'll like it. It's $5. It's a quick read. It's going to teach you a lot, and you can grab it below. All right, one more bonus book. This is the last bonus. This is my other book, my first book, Make It Rain, The Secret to Generating Massive Paydays from Your List. This one, again, it's a super short book. You can read it in one sitting, but it's going to give you a ton of foundational core email marketing principles. If you are struggling to get your emails to convert and you want to learn how to write really awesome emails that sell, you're absolutely going to love this book. And again, I'm kind of tooting my own horn again for the second time, but it is a good book. It's been downloaded over 30,000 times. I mean, there's proof of concept. People actually like it, 30,000 times at the time of this recording. So depending on when you're watching this, it could be more. But people like this book. It's kind of become a little bit famous in the email marketing world because, a lot of people read it and have gotten good results from it. So obviously I'm a little biased, but I think you'll like it. And there's a link for this book below this video in the, what's it called? The description section. That's what it's called. The description section of the video, you'll find a link. It's a free book, so you can grab a free copy. You can read it. It'll turn you into a better email marketer very fast. I think you're going to like it. And that's it. Later.